It's all metal. Okay.
All right. It is 7:10, and I call this meeting to order. First subject matter on the agenda reads introductions. I'm Tom Burrows, Chair.
I'm Scott Belford. I believe, at least until the next official board meeting, traffic and transportation chair, but all these things are confusing.
I'm just Steve. Just for the record, do you have any committees? Are you the Marine? You're the Marine?
Yeah, Marine Environmental Protection.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, Steve, Marine. So it's us three. Okay, good. Now we'll go to item 3 on the agenda after introductions. What we have here is an overview of the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization and the role that the neighborhood designee assigned to the Citizens Advisory Committee, CAC, we'll call it, has as a voting member on the Apple CAC. So the overview is that, just to fill you in, I've been attending these board meetings since 1999,
Okay. and
missed approximately 5 meetings in 10 years. And it has been one of the most important discussions in my 10 years on the board, transportation and traffic, and we've always held high esteem and value the Ample CAP position. It's always been a pivotal role for the board.
Right.
And because of that pivotal role, it's always been discussed at the level of who would be the designee. It's always been on the agenda.
Why does it matter?
Because I, as a board member and as a community member, that person on CAC has voting privileges.
CAC 7, Apple CAC.
The Citizens Advisory Committee, so we'll say CAC from here. The designee for CAC has a privilege that arises far greater than any other role. Marine, legislative, education, all those other committees do not carry on above and beyond our meeting of the neighborhood board at its level. The Apple CAC designee actually gets to wear the hat of the board and intermingle with outside of 96706 and represent the board.
Okay.
That representation, if we look at item 3 as an overview, that representation is to be of a position of the board. So whoever may be that Ample CAC representative, when Ample CAC has such a matter on an agenda, we expect that CAC designee to advance the board's agenda.
Okay.
We don't want, in my opinion, the CAC designee advancing, being a wayward road.
Okay.
To make it simple. It's supposed to be community-driven and then advanced to the Ample CAC, of which the policy committee then extrapolates from the CAC what's a priority or not. They work together in tandem. So the role that the Ample CAC has is that they don't have a voting power on the policy committee, but the policy committee of 15 members that our Senator Willis Farrell sits on, they take heed to what the CAC does. They're currently engaged in prioritizing the ORTP 2035 and the STIP, which is called the Transportation Improvement Program.
All right.
So I just very quickly, I'm going to close up here with item number 3, that the Evan Neighborhood Board historically has always placed the subject matter of who's to represent on this committee. Since I've been attending meetings since 1999, and I've gone through the records, it's always been on the agenda. So your inquiry of introducing yourself, am I still the transportation, the way I read the agenda is that of May's meeting, of the regular neighborhood board meeting in May, you were listed as that transportation committee chair. You were also listed on that same regularly scheduled agenda as the Ample CAC chair, as that designee. Unbeknownst to me, at that May meeting, you were removed. You had a meeting of which I could not attend yesterday, of which is what we're at today. Are you still that representative? I, for the purposes of conducting this meeting with you tonight, called this meeting in advance with the assumption you are that transportation designee. However, due to what transpired at May's meeting, regular scheduled board meeting, Kirkville removed you as the on-poll CAC representative, and I'm not addressing you as that. So you're not on the agenda as the CAC representative. However, from my understanding, Kobe Lynn's been given that role, and he's not here tonight. So the overview is that it's a very important position. So that was my 2 cents.
I'm looking at the May agenda. Let's see.
It just listed the committees on the
agenda. Okay. So yeah, explanations are good. And something you mentioned there that I'm curious about is policy committee. Policy committee is also a function of OMPO. Given that we're documenting this, these are helpful things. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm looking at the May agenda. So yeah, I guess you would be right. May 14th, I guess at that point on the agenda was still listed as OMPO.
There's no reference to new assignments made.
No reference there. We're informed that prior to that meeting in April, action was taken. But at any rate, yeah, I'm comfortable being traffic and transportation chair tonight until our next official board meeting.
Do you have any further discussion on item 3? Anybody?
Okay.
We'll move to item 4.
Good.
On item 4 is OMPO-CAC interaction with legislation being advanced by the Evan Neighborhood Board. Item A, transportation projects proposed that lessen traffic congestion. B, Evan Neighborhood Board voting record on transportation issues that went before the Evan Neighborhood Board. So in essence, number 4 on the agenda is to look at the history of then what were those transportation measures that the community wanted to advance. What were those issues that were of importance? The reason that I bring this up is that the Leeward Bikeway was a legislatively appropriated $4 million expenditure in 1999.
Okay.
And the community of Eva really wanted this 18-mile bikeway. It was to augment our transportation in others here. In 1975, 1977, the federal government gave the Oahu Rail and Land Company's 40-foot right-of-way that the federal government had owned. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. I'm Tom. Kona. You know Steve? Yes. We have an agenda here. Just to bring you up to speed, I'm on item number 4. What I'd like to do is, since we've just introduced ourselves, do you need any explanation of item number 3, an overview of the Citizens Advisory Committee on OMPO-CAC and what that role is? Are you familiar with that? Okay, so we're on item number 4. And
I'll give a good description, though, making sure that you talk about this thing called OMPO, Policy Committee, and CAC. So as long as you got that stuff down, these things are always confusing.
Okay, now with that said, we have item number 4. What is the board wanted to advance? So there's been numerous community members and people out there who have taken the H1 freeway, Farrington Highway, and Farrington, right? And then we have 2 corridors. We have the north-south road being advanced, and we have Fort Weaver Road being advanced. Okay. These 2 corridors, north-south road, Fort Weaver, it's been asked for years before I was ever on the board. There was a person by the name of Jeff Alexander. He had advocated that these Cane Hall roads in between these quadrants be open for public use. And so we had, in my position as a legislative committee and Scott Belford in transportation, we wanted to advance this for community discussion. So then we brought it, the next step is to say to OMPO, prioritize this, because whatever expenditure is in doing that, but that's old news. You know why? Somebody blocked this property. So these Cane Hall roads is a whole different matter. So what we have is another road, and it's off of Farrington Highway. And what it is the east-west connector road, and it goes like this. This portion from here to this portion here is $17 million, and the state has paid for this already. It's in the bidding process, and there was a dispute. But this is off of Farrington, the east-west connector road that goes to DHHL's property and terminates here. What we have is a landowner here, a landowner that would be responsible in the purchase to build the rest of this road, which would be built with private sector monies. DR works. And then it would be then, upon completion, open up as a public thoroughfare that the city and county would own. So here you have a state-owned thoroughfare, and it's paid for. This would be the city continuation. At this time, looking at the role of the Honorable Citizens Advisory Committee role, this is one measure that our board could offer to that CAC representative to put on what's called an ORTP 2035, Oahu Regional Transportation Plan. We've already devised every 5 years, we come up with a new plan, and we go 20 years ahead of ourselves, right? So they're devising right now the 2035 ORTP. To get this road funded, or pushed, or advanced, or conditions by the State Land Use Commission on the developer, it would be wise that our CAC representative advanced that and offered that. Number one, CAC, for discussion, East-West Connector Road. Number one. Number two, so the antecedents to this was again what? Kane Hall Roads transcended to new property owner to a state thoroughfare which ends in a cornfield. Do we accept a road that ends in a cornfield as a community, or do we want it finished? That's up to us, as we would then advance through the OPPO 2035. To have a requisite on the developer, this has to be done. The second measure is what is the Leeward Bikeway that I mentioned earlier. Was funded in 1999 with $4 million, and it was on the Oahu Rail and Land Company 40-foot right-of-way that the federal government gave us in the 70s. And it stipulated in that federal agreement, the federal government gave this to the state, that in order to use that 40-foot right-of-way, some 18-mile stretch from Nanakuli to Waipio Point Access Road, is that they have to build a pedestrian thoroughfare, a 10-foot wide swath, a bikeway. So back in 1999, the legislature appoints the $4 million. They do the draft environmental impact statement, the EIS comes out, they do a finding of no significant impact, and they say it was supposed to be finished in October of '03. So since October of 2003, we still have an inch of the bikeway built. There's a disconnect. Could be a problem. The CAC representative is that person who's to go and lobby for our community to advance that. Right now, on an agenda last night, I saw the Kobe Lynn had handled the Transportation Committee, and on subject matter, he had a handout. One of them what was called the TIP, or State Transportation Improvement Program, and it's a 2-year fiscal biennium, and in it, they decided to delay the Leeward Bikeway again. Now, we can either be proactive as a community, want to advance these measures at a board level and advocate, have an agenda to call it that, or do nothing and have a CAC member sit in the room and merely vote on issues someone else has advanced, someone else is asking for, someone else wants to have funded. So this position of the CAC representative is so key because they're competing with the rest of the island and the rest of the state, so to speak, of what's the priority. North-South Road is supposed to go all the way down into Eva Beach at Keoneola Boulevard. Okay? 6-lane thoroughfare. It ends at the Kapolei Parkway, and there's $30 million to bring it to Roosevelt. So down here is Roosevelt, and then you have the Leeward Bikeway here. Now, this Roosevelt thoroughfare to Farrington, you can see the importance of the East-West Connector Road as that connectivity. The Leeward Bikeway giving people an option. Now, this stretch here from Kapolei Parkway, okay, going into Kapolei, is 1 mile, and the legislature just this year appropriated $30 million. It cost $30 million to build a mile of road. Back in 2000, it cost $5 million. So we've gone to $5 million a mile to $30 million.
That's a stretch between Renton and
What mile?
North South.
To Roosevelt. Roosevelt. To Kapolei Parkway to Roosevelt.
Okay.
North-South Road extension. It's $30 million. The legislature just got it appropriated. That has to be prioritized in the boards and people. The OMPOCAC representative needs to then advance North-South Road completion. We can, as a board, do nothing, go to the meetings, not make reports, or we can, again, take an agenda, put it on an agenda, and try to get the community to weigh in and offer direction. Those are 3 examples. So I'm going to open it up at this time to Scott Belford, who has been our OMPOCAC representative for years. He's been attending these meetings. And just for historical perspectives for you, we have had meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting for years, where the legislative agendas like we had accomplished tonight, we have a regular scheduled meeting. Regular scheduled meeting will have committee reports. We don't get to them. Meetings get adjourned prior to. And so Scott Belford has been periodically wanting to advance and usually does it at a committee level. And will sit here and tell us about what's going on in OMPO. But when it comes to the full regular board meeting, that's the only place you can advance these ideas. It's the only place you can take action. Give the CAC a representation to move on something. Authority to vote. Instigate, change, amend. So this revision 13 that Colby Lynn brought up in his report last night gives us an opportunity to say the Leeward Bikeway should not be delayed. These are things that now, clarification, who's going to put that on the agenda to Chair Farrell's attention and say, hey, we got a meeting in July. Testimony's due in 2 weeks. Okay? Who's going to advance testimony to OMPO Policy Committee and weigh in and say, don't delay this? Is this something that you think you can take over? Can you elaborate for us?
Well, I mean, I think you elaborated, but you made it clear who would do that. That's the OMPOCAC rep. I mean, I guess, excuse me, the only thing I would say historically is that it's all about this thing here. And I know that we had good initiative with the last, the former chair, we had this interesting initiative, which was well intended, which is that we, at 6 p.m. on the night of the regularly scheduled board meetings, we had an all-committee meeting. And from August of 2007 through December of 2003, we opened up, or I opened up the library for these meetings. And after setting up the room, I would get the chair to call us to order usually about 6:30, but then by 6:50, we had chaos plus OMPOCAC. So I'll say only that I have made a deliberate point to be at pretty much every OMPOCAC meeting in town on the approximate second Wednesday of each month. And then we've had some subcommittee work that I volunteered to be a part of, doing a public-private partnership study when that was very contentious, and when rail and what was and wasn't a valid alternative to rail, and et cetera, OMPOCAC was tasked with reporting back, or a subcommittee was tasked with reporting back to OMPOCAC our findings on the pros and cons of public-private partnerships. So I made it a point to be a very good, involved, proactive member, but I cannot say that I have effectively advanced as a board agenda items that were advanced on during a regular board meeting, which would kind of give me the gravity to kind of have to insert myself into a lot of OMPOCAC meetings to say, Mr. Chair, if you would please, our board is asked. So, the idea, I think, is for me, if I'm not, to have some opportunity to summarize this time that I spent doing the OMPOCAC work. And I'll say that we need to do better. There's a lot to be said for having a committee meeting where we have a chance to kind of sit and discuss things that may or may not make sense, and then a regular board meeting asking this person to do our bidding. I made sure that we stayed represented. I've been told we've lost representation in the past because we didn't attend, and I certainly made sure to do that. And I've made sure to advocate things that were important. I've certainly leaned heavily on the telecommuting and fiber to the premise focus of OnVoCAC. So.
Telecommuting is one way to not have to build a $30 million mile road, right? You know, if you could just not have to get on the roads altogether, that would help, right? So it's all part of the big picture.
So I'm staying focused on specifics, and we're on agenda item 4. I'm supposing number B, Evan Neighborhood Board voting record on transportation issues that went before the Evan Neighborhood Board, and I can't really speak of any.
Can I give an example?
Sure.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I want to give an example.
Okay, yeah. Please.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Right here on Fort Weaver Road, we have a cane haul road that is called Mango Tree Boulevard, or Bill Belfort Drive, and on the bridge, just Cane Road. This is where the Child and Family is, right? Child and Family Service, and we have this pedestrian traffic signal. And it's a pedestrian activated traffic signal at 35 seconds. Now, this Child and Family Service light is of this underpass. The Department of Transportation, I advanced in 2001 and 2002, just to go back, I got a grant of $2,000 to look at a way to remove this light. Should we have an overpass, underpass, remove the crosswalk, or leave it, or make the light permanent? And we have 5 public meetings advertised in the community newspapers to ask the public to come and weigh in, and we did a poll. And the results were that the community of those that attended the meeting and of the poll, they wanted an underpass. An underpass would have been what's called the ADA, right, for the American Disabilities Act, what's called a switchback. The switchback is this. It goes like this, it comes back, it comes like this, it goes like this. As you've seen many spirals for ramps for wheelchairs and an overpass of a spiral, the land to do that is number 1 in engineering fee. The overpass number 2, they said people would look into the homes of Westlock Fairways, and those residents didn't want an overpass. They felt violated. So the underpass of the Cane Hall Road here was a logical fit. It was right there. So that came in at $1.5 million. The overpass at $3 million. So what happened was Director Haraga came to the community in 01, 02-ish, something like that, and he says, well, you know, I'm not for underpasses or tunnels. I think they're a magnet for crime and mayhem and whatever have you, but whatever the board wants, I will entertain. And what happened was that the board took a vote, 6-3, that they wanted to have a traffic signal here, permanent. Permanent. That they did not want, what the DOT could have built, was remove that traffic signal and have an underpass, and it'd be a safe passage for everybody.
With that concern, I thought there was a crime concern expressed that going under the road would lead to people being jumped and it wouldn't be safe.
Correct. That's why the vote was 6-3, not to advance an underpass. And so now all I'm saying is that today, where we're at today, is we're at a permanent traffic signal. Now, I in the community, like all of you, are constantly I'm still asked, why can't we get rid of that light? Why is that light there? It wreaks havoc. It's really a problem child. And what are we doing about it? Now, the board then, in shooting down the alternative of an underpass, said, why don't we get the state right-of-way and condemn, take eminent domain of this property owner here, and have what they don't do in Vermont, but they're called frontage roads. Okay? Something as simple as what's called a frontage road. So that Child and Family Service, these folks getting out wouldn't have to come and do a U-turn on Renton and do all that stuff. They'd have their own ingress and egress off of Old Fort Weaver. So the board's resolve to this was, DOT, use your right-of-way, eminent domain, $500,000 on camera. So we try to advance that. That has fizzled. So should the board, on the agenda it says, what has the board done in the past? The board has actually taken a position to have this become a permanent traffic signal.
if people want to change that, that's where the advocates have to come in and put that on the tip, which is being amended to delay the leeward bikeway. So if Eva Beach had a voice, a vocal advocate to go to these AMPOCAC meetings and say, wait a minute, I want X, Y, Z, but I want you to still entertain this. Should we entertain it? Is it resolved? Does the community feel comfortable with it being permanent? It's actually been moved a little bit as well. We don't know how, when it plays out, what the ramifications are. So it's actually been tweaked, went down the hill a little bit, right? So do we like this? Should we weigh in or not? That's the role of discussion that we need to, in my opinion, have at the board level so that we can say, you know what, advocate this, don't advocate that. The board advocated and passed something in the legislative committee to connect, right here, Renton Road with Keoneo. Gentry Homes has a cul-de-sac here. So if this were Renton, they have a cul-de-sac, here we are, here, they're saying, experts, gee, what you need is connectivity. Why don't you connect this so that everyone doesn't have to go on Fort Beaver Road?
Right here, right down.
Yes. Okay, the land is there, and Gentry has said the following. Hey, I gotta go over the railroad tracks. A 40-foot right-of-way that the state owns. The rest is city. So Gentry Homes has said, hey, I got a conceptual improvement in the unilateral agreement to have a cul-de-sac not connect. But they listened to the community. Community passed a motion from a legislative committee level to the full board level on the agenda and said, Gentry Homes, we want you to advance this. Great. Then what happens? Does the board have a review? Does the community go back and say, what's the status? Does anybody say, what do we need to do to connect this? It's not on the state's radar screen. It's not on any CIP. The city hasn't on any funding cycle. So the city and state have negated our efforts. So when we pass motions and we pass discussions, what are we doing in the aftermath, right? What's the rebound? What are we doing in return to come back for a status? Traffic signal? Connectivity? Leeward Bikeway? Connectivity? East-West Connected Road? Now let's get into Farrington Highway. The city owns Farrington Highway up to Old Fort Beaver Road. From Old Fort Beaver Road, the city has from Old Fort Beaver Road into Kapolei City. Farrington Highway into town is state. So now another object has been...
At north-south is where the division is? Or just along
Old Fort Weaver. Old Fort Weaver and Farrington. Old Fort Weaver and Farrington is division city state. So now, this is Tom talking now. This is my personal agenda. My personal agenda has been is that Farrington Highway, north-south road. Look at Fort Weaver, Cunea, and Farrington. We have what's called an overpass, right? We have an overpass. We have 2 lanes going over the highway, yeah, to get to the H1. We don't have a stop sign here. The state and the city have proposed a 4-way traffic signal here. It's a cornfield. So, do we as a community, Tom Berg's agenda, do we accept the fact that we're going to allow this to be a traffic signal, or do we think ahead, ask for it to be funded in the TIP, advocated for it to be included in the Wahoo Regional Transportation Plan 2035, ask for it to be labeled and put in the EVA development plan, and then we say, I'll take a roundabout, I'll take a overpass on Farrington, going over North-South Road? What are the options? Do we continue to entertain it, or do we give up? Who's going to advocate? That's the purpose of being on the board, in my opinion, is what do we want to push as a community? Why isn't the North-South Road funded to be finished? Why are we stopping at Roosevelt? Design says it's going all the way into Eva Beach and Keoneo. So everybody who lives in Ocean Point, they got one way out. It's great. Instant direct route. Another item, pedestrian access to the beach. It's called Essex Road. Board took a position twice when we had different board members. And the Everyone Board passed a motion twice to say, open Essex Road. Everybody who goes down Geiger Road on a bicycle is risking their life. There's no shoulder, there's no bike path. Families no longer take Geiger Road. Unilateral agreement, Geiger Road.
Who's supposed to widen Geiger Road 4 lanes? Gentry. Do we pressure Gentry? They said they built it in '01. They said they built it in '02, and I know the camera's running. Because when Tesha Malama was the AMPO-CAC chair, and Tesha Malama was doing meetings like this, we had to-do lists. And we had answers. And we were told Geiger Road would be a 4-lane thoroughfare. We're in 2009. And I brought it up a couple meetings ago. What's the status of this? Well, we have a commercial center over here that's been purchased, and now they're also responsible for widening the road in the agreement, so it's chaos. Do we put that in as number 4? Do we as a community say, I want this road expedited? So that Essex Road here, imagine, bike lane, Essex Road to the beach. Right now, families got to go to Coral Sea. Every bicyclist has to go down 5 miles out of their way to Coral Sea to get to the beaches. When right here is the crow flies, you have Essex Road. The Navy says, we'll open it for you.
So, how reactive would you expect AMPO's policy committee and AMPO-CAC to be if these things were advanced? Would it have to be responsive? You would at least get a response as to why or why not or when? Okay. Interesting.
So I've just, in this discussion, I've whipped up some 5 ingredients for thoroughfares. If there were 20 other people in the room, they'd tell you more. There's going to be a meeting by the DOT, by the way, to get 3 lanes over the Farrington Highway overpass. And this means that our competing to get on the H1 eastbound with Waipahu is going to be pivotal. Will Waipahu have to yield in the rendering so that we have 2 lanes now? Because we have 3 lanes on Fort Weaver Road, down to 1 lane. Does that make sense?
Bottleneck on the
Bottleneck.
on the
3 to 1. How do you get 2 lanes, 3 to 2? We have to shut down possibly in renderings and yield on Waipahu. I don't know. But a meeting's coming up. DOT directors get a call for a meeting, may come to the board, maybe a special meeting, asking Kapolei Waipahu Ewa. It was said at our last meeting by the DOT guy. The DOT guy says, mark on your calendar, what, June 3rd, we're going to have this meeting. It didn't come to fruition, it didn't happen, right? But, what are we going to do as a community? Are we going to say, I want that configuration? We're going to have to take a position. We're going to have to advance to Director Morioka, we want this. Someone's going to have to say, I have an agenda. I want this, and push it, or Waipahu says, you know what, you're 3 lanes to 1, you spent $70 million widening Fort Weaver Road. Tough. Do we fight them? Do we work with them? Yes. We have to get together with our neighbors on this. But who's going to advance it? Who's going to be the AMPO-CAC representative to advance this? Who's going to, because this has to be funded, has to be put on the tip, has to be put on the ORTP. It's not there. It doesn't exist. Hasn't been funded. So who's going to ask for it to be funded? Okay. That's where the May meeting was so important to me. That when I asked in the discussion, who's voting this month at May's 20th CAC meeting? Who's representing me at the May 20th meeting? I didn't get an answer. I was told that basically the results were it was Kobe Lin. What's Kobe Lin's position on these 7 items? I don't know. I have a history with him. He's been attending. I've been hearing his reports. I know what his position is. That's why you will see the next item on the agenda that says, requesting to place item number 5, that this be on the July's meeting. Like I said, I've missed all of 5 meetings since 1999, and basically every legislative, transportation, education, marine, every committee assignment was done in the open at a regularly scheduled board meeting. Not one chair since 1999, through my records, has ever replaced somebody, removed somebody, positioned somebody on their own, outside of a board meeting. It's like Obama taking the presidency on November 4th and saying, you know what, George Bush, you don't have to January 21. You're out today. Bush had till the 21st of January as our president. But what happened was he was to be the representative till his term was up July 1. So I'm confused as to where we stand on these 7 items and who's representing the board, us, the community.
Yeah, I think that's thoroughly erroneous, like an example. but I'm not, you know, I'm not gonna argue with it. It doesn't make any sense.
Which argument?
Obama kicking, you know, like Bush out of office. First of all, it's my opinion and it's my impression that the chair can appoint these positions. That's one of his jobs. It's like Obama appointing a position, a cabinet position. That's his, he can do that. In getting back to the, you know, whether or not Scott should continue or not continue, you know, I'm kind of uncomfortable.
Just another discussion, I don't think that's what I'm
At any rate,
saying. Off the board.
let me finish. You have a habit of always interrupting, and it pisses people off. Shut up until I get done. Now, what I was saying was, you know, I feel uncomfortable talking about whether or not someone should be a CAC representative or UMPO or whatever, and the actual groundbreaking process has started, and then go to the next one, and have priorities set up in terms of, you know, it's a situation where I really think we kind of muddy the waters and evaporate some of our strength if we have like 7 things to focus on, even 5. I would say we should just have 2, and I think it'd be important to both the board and the community to you know, decide on those 2. And then the other thing that I thought was important was, I've gone to UMPO before for another board, and I know what the situation is. And if you have 2 or 3 representatives, that's not a problem. They don't kick you out. You know, they welcome the participation, because a lot of times they don't have enough. They don't have the whole lot. They don't have every, you know, neighborhood board and so on. So as I've said in the past, I think it's important to have everybody who wants to be on the transportation or UMPO or whatever committee be on those committees. And I think it's perfectly appropriate to have 2 people be co-chair. Or, I don't know if there's 3 chairs, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, the more, I think, in terms of, the more participation we have, the better it is. So the 2 things that I'm putting forth are as much participation in the committee, you know, situation as we can possibly have is better, and even having different opinions. But I do think we ought to settle on a couple of priorities and carry through on those priorities with whatever input we have.
I'd like to speak now, Steve, but I want to make sure that you're perfectly okay with that.
Good.
Okay. First, something you mentioned when you began speaking, and I just wanted to clarify it because it seemed to be the premise of what you were saying was that some of this was about me being involved with OCAC. And to be really clear, June is the last month that I'm on the board, and it's the last month that I'm on the board, period, in the discussion. So I think the issue was, not unlike what you're suggesting, the more participation, the better. For the first time ever in last month's meeting, the process was quote-unquote background. There wasn't a discussion of, hey, since the former OCAC representative will not be on the board anymore, this is a great opportunity to be A, aware, B, briefed a little on where we are and where we can go, and see who wants to raise their hand and be involved. So I just wanted to clarify that, Steve. And in all due respect, for someone who, you know, you never hesitate to ask me and ask me and ask me for a computer help. But the second that I actually, it's what I perceive to be a moderately informal discussion here, dare to step over you, not once but twice, cuss at me, and slam your fist on the table is fine. I respect that, and I'm very sorry to interrupt you. For someone who has given me 15 to 20 phone calls for a discounted computer or for free help, God knows I would have never ever spoke over you, and I do apologize for that. And so I just want to clarify that. And also, you seemed to object early on that there was a discussion about BOCAC representation, and I think that's fine, but I could have sworn I walked into a meeting last night where the name Tom Berg was being used repeatedly, and Tom Berg was being discussed, and Tom Berg was being discussed, and Tom Berg even being present, and I didn't hear a single objection. The subject changed when I opened my phone and recorded the conversation and took out my camera, so I just, as a matter of consistency, find it interesting that I think you were in that same meeting, and I didn't hear the same deliberate objection to the discussion of people or individuals or political policy while you were discussing someone who wasn't even there. That's just me, and I'm into transparency, and that's my comment.
Let's weigh in on this. The statement that we should have as many representatives there as possible. A person who goes 3 times could come up with a nonprofit and be a voting member. But for the neighborhood board, CAC only gives 1 vote to 1 member assigned. So if you're there and Hargrave's there and I'm there, 1 person gets to vote, the rest are there for their own cognizance or whatever value they give it to themselves, whatever title they want. The board gets 1 vote. So it'd be as if there were a big, if I could bring this up as an example, it was as if to me as a member on the court, I could think of Kate's International wanting to expand the Moy Fish Farm they have 3 miles out in Evan Beach from 4 cages to maybe 10 cages, whatever they want to raise. There's concerns of that waste and forced feeding that has an impact on our environment, and what are we and how are we impacted on our beaches. This could be very important to someone in your field in the marine environment, and next thing you know, the last meeting you went to in April as the Marine Environment Chair, all of a sudden at May's meeting, the agenda has you as that chair. The chair of the board says, excuse me, in the last 4 weeks that we didn't meet, I've replaced you. You're no longer the Marine Environment Chair. I wanted to speak up. I'm not his attorney. I really don't care one way up or down, other than I had to say, if it were me in your shoes, that I had attended 3 of the 4 meetings in this year's and had a 75% attendance record, of which is documented. And the chair said, I removed you because I was told you weren't attending the meetings when I was there. I'd be livid. I'd be livid. I'd fight defamation of character. Now, the rest of the board can coddle it, accept it, and keep that person as chair. Or you could say justice was undone, and we're going to correct it. This meeting tonight, last item, says the OMPO-CAC position needs to be on the July's agenda so that the community knows who's representing them with a voting power and privilege, and not the appointee designated by a kingdom behind dark closets.
Before we, again, I think if you have a committee that's working together, and hopefully they are, they can decide. For instance, if the chair can't go of the committee, then he can have somebody else vote for him. But again, I've been to these things for years and years, and it never hurts to have more than 1 person there, because you have 2 or 3 minds working together to talk about how you want to vote, how you want to represent, your community. And I've always thought that, I always thought it was a good thing to have a couple people there that are backing the community, mainly. That's who we're representing, and coming up with a really coherent, understandable, valid position. Because there are more than 1 person there. The 1 person, like there's a lot of stuff that you talk about, I have no clue on. And I don't know where it is, I don't know the roads, or this or that other thing. That happens a lot in the board because I'm new to the community A. I don't get out around in the community a lot, and so on and so forth. So I try to keep quiet in those situations, and I defer to other people, and I wait for them to kind of like educate me in these areas. And so when I say, I think it's a great idea to have 4 or 5 people, if we can have that many, or even just 2 or 3, go to these situations where, it's outside the community, we have to speak up, we have to have some input, and numbers is always impressive in any of this stuff. So the reality of the situation is, I think it's a great benefit to have 2 people of differing opinions and maybe a 3rd or 4th there to help out sort, how they want to vote and so on and so forth. The other thing I think is important, say you had 2 committee co-chairs. They could, amongst themselves, decide one person's going to vote one time and one person's going to vote another time for the community. I don't think we have to have this huge, problem of dissent and, all that kind of stuff. So I still stand on what I originally said. I think that the committee system should be open. I think it should be, everybody who wants to be on that committee should be on that committee, because obviously they're representing not only their own opinion, but I'm sure they're, Scott's representing one side of the community or one point of view, and Colby's, representing another, and so on and so forth. And, I'd hoped that, because I keep getting into this because I don't know the facts. And to hear, 2 sides, conflicting facts, conflicting situation, I just, want to retreat and say, you guys are going to have to work it out. Because I hear different things, I don't know who to believe. So I'm not going to believe anybody, basically, because they're different, and you guys should kind of like work it out. But I had hoped, well, I don't want to, see, Scott, what I don't want to do is have you argue with me, because I don't know anything
I'm
about
not
it.
arguing, I was just asking for clarification.
Okay,
That's all.
I heard that you quit, so naturally I thought, yeah, you should have somebody else.
Move.
So that's what I heard. Now, I also heard, you guys have gotten angry at the meetings and said things I'm sure that maybe in hindsight you would have liked to have taken back.
No.
Maybe not. But I know I was accused of doing stuff and I was just sitting there. I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything, I didn't do anything, but I've been accused of doing stuff out of anger, I think. And so I just, okay, whatever. But the situation is, I came from a much more dysfunctional board than this one.
Sure, are you kidding?
Absolutely.
You gotta be kidding. I thought we were
Twice as dysfunctional.
I thought we were the writing on the wall.
So, no, and there's even more dysfunctional boards than the one I came from, and I've actually attended some of those meetings. But beyond that, it's like when we actually have a board meeting, I would like everybody to respect everybody else, and I would like the respect to be, from everybody. And sometimes we don't get to that. We don't bring ourselves up to that level. So, I don't like to get into anything I don't understand or anything I don't know about. I definitely have my druthers on this. So if you were to ask me, which is my most important priority, which one should we strike out and really back and push and go to the wall, go to the mattresses on, it would be, the north-south road. Complete that. Because that gets people into Eva Beach down below. The quickest, I don't care if it costs $30 million. If we can get TARP money for it, whatever. It's going to, maybe, $5 million back when and $30 million today, it's going to be $60 million down the road. And so, we should be breaking, ground on that, and it should be, coming down in. And I live on Keone Road, so, it's going to be the street, I don't care. Get the people in and whatever into Eva Beach. So that's my biggest priority, but that may not be the community's biggest priority.
Can I?
Sure.
I want to say something. I thought at the committee level
for transportation and IP legislature, I thought we were of trying to get them on the agendas, get them in the meeting before it was adjourned, so that we could advance whatever work we did amongst ourselves, calling these meetings. And I thought that everything was in sync and clear to me at May's meeting. I did. I thought at April's meeting, the so-called committee level was the same, of constant. That same continuity was again through May. I just want to elaborate though that if I can, on this, is that if the chair of the board said the reason that we've replaced you, Scott, is because we know you're leaving in June and I wanted to just jump the gun, make sure we didn't have a gap, that would to me have been fodder of discussion. I think I could swallow it. But what was said at the meeting was not that. What was said at the meeting was, you've been replaced because AMPO wrote me a letter, and I watched the video over and over. I watched it over and over, verbatim. You were replaced, Scott Belfort, because I got a letter from AMPO that says you were not attending. Now, I contacted AMPO, they said the letter doesn't exist. We never contacted your chair and told him that Scott Belfort had a poor attendance record, Mr. Berg. So do I walk away from that? Or do I challenge my chair and say, Mr. Chair, you defamed a colleague of mine inappropriately. Okay. I'm offended.
Okay. Now, I remember it as a call. I could be wrong.
And guess what? AMPO states there was no phone call as well. They didn't initiate
For what it's
anything.
worth, the video that it was...
Then, but still, it's a situation, and I see, if indeed, the most important thing is whether Scott was going or not. And if he was going, then he should get AMPO to write something up that he was in attendance. If he wasn't, then we have an issue with, you know, Kurt maybe misinforming us or making a mistake or whatever. But either way, I can't take sides because I don't know what happened. I obviously wasn't at AMPO. So it's still a situation where, you know, I've appreciated, even though there are a lot of things that I agree with on both of your points of view, and there's some things that I disagree with. I'm sure you can, you know, I'm sure that that's okay. But I still think it's a situation where, you know, if we all treated each other with as much respect as we possibly could, in each given situation, we could probably glean more information. And you know, if Kurt made a mistake, then he made a mistake. If somebody else made a mistake, because it's like AMPO, you know,
we have to move on.
Yeah. So it's not worth dwelling over. But at the same time, you know, if I think the most important feature of this argument is whether or not Scott was attending the meetings, and that's where I come down.
It's online.
Yeah,
The minutes are online.
Yeah, I don't know.
I looked him up. He's in
I
attendance.
don't have. Remember, I don't have a computer. I don't know anything about computers.
I did. I looked up the agendas and minutes, and it says Scott Belfort in attendance.
Okay.
So, I mean, so first,
then something was done that maybe shouldn't have been done. But that's still out of, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that still is outside of a committee meeting, unless we're discussing that, you know, and all the people are there that have to do with it. Because you can't discuss something, I mean, we can't discuss the issue, from my point of view, satisfactorily unless Kurt was here, and unless he's participating.
did anyone say that when you were talking about Tom last night? Did anyone say that when I walked in? I'm just asking you. I'm asking you something.
But I wasn't talking about Tom. I was listening to people. I was listening to people talk about Tom.
Okay.
But they weren't talking about Tom per se. They were talking about, you know, like what was being done, what was being discussed, or the fact that, you know, that it, from my point of view, if you have a meeting, you know, I was upset because, you know, we got this, and then we got, you know, the agenda setting thing, and then we're going to get the agenda for the actual, yeah. So there's 3 mailings for this month, and that always ticks me off, because I think with proper planning, with attention to detail, you can put all these things, and as many meetings as you want, in one, you know, one mail out. And I think we should move toward that you know, in the future. But barring that aside, that's the only thing I was concerned about, you know. And the other thing, what was the other thing I brought up? Were you there? No?
Physically.
Okay. I think I had only one other point to make, but it wasn't really on that. But I think it was, you know, I felt uncomfortable, but I thought you should have been there. You know, and then if you had been there, you'd been able to answer this stuff. From my point of view, it wasn't personal attacks. It wasn't in any way, you know, like critical. It wasn't a critical, you know, most of the, I think people were trying to get through the fact of this meeting and, you know, just discuss things that had to do with legislative stuff.
Well, just to let you know, though, that we always had those 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock committee meetings with Hargrave, and we had devised that to be a way to save paper, save postage, be frugal, and time. And Scott Belford, like he mentioned, was opening up the room. What happened was, when Rich Hargrave resigned, the agenda still had all committee meeting, and I went, and Scott was there, and Kurt said he's canceling it. I'm not putting it on the agendas anymore. You're on your own. So I personally did not know, this was orchestrated before his agenda was put in. I did not know at the time of my facilitating this with Belford that he had a meeting the day prior to that. I don't get emails from the chair. I don't get phone calls from the chair. Dialogue is scanned. So I went forward and said, well, I've been terminated from a 6 o'clock meeting that we've had for over 2 years. It was done without the board's consent. It was done without being on the agenda. The chair decided to, again, make a decision without anybody's knowledge but in the closet. So I said, I don't work in the closet. I'm going to have a meeting. So that's why we're here tonight, because I can't and do not know what the chair is going to do next. It's hit or miss and guess. There's no consistency. It's make it up as you go, and I'm offended by it again. I don't like that policy.
So sticking to here, issue 5. Next month, or actually here at our final meeting of this current term, yeah, I mean, it's something that should come up. I do not believe that we want to have a position where we have differing opinions at the CAC level. I think that there's different opinions. That's what committees and then board meetings are for, so that we speak as one voice once we're in that limited hour and a half of CAC. If there's things that someone feels aren't being advanced, then they should go and volunteer and be involved. Mary and both voters encourage me to please feel free to come on down and do anything I want. And should I choose to, I certainly will. But and we're allowed 2 people officially, and certainly the more the merrier, Steve, I would agree. But I don't think we ever want to have a situation where we go down to an CAC meeting and express unresolved, have a board conflict. That, to me, in the big picture, is why we come to some consensus through democracy at a board level and we bring things forward. Because 2 things are really important. I mean, this is confusing to everyone, and consistency is hardly there. We got a board that this month, there's 3 members on this board that were actually on the board 2 years ago. There's 3 human beings on the board as we end this 2-year term, myself, Tom, and Mitchell, who actually stepped forward 2 years ago or on the ballot. There's no one else on the current board who, or excuse me, Gary. There's no one else on the current board who is there. So consistency is a really big deal. Somewhere, in my opinion, we're kind of lucky, as antagonized as I get with all the detail, but we're fortunate to have this much information so we can distill it. But it's important that once it's distilled, we speak as one voice. But I also think it's really important, I mean, you mentioned respect, and I think that's good, Steve, but at least my own opinion, and I'm going to have to bring it up at this next meeting, it was a rather substantial statement for someone to, as the board chair, tell the public that I was removed from CAC with the letter. And the statement was, as we verify with video, a letter. parking lot, I was told it was a phone call, and then I was told I must be accusing this person of lying, and the dialogue was discontinued. It's not incumbent upon me to show up at a board meeting with a letter from UNCOCAC saying, gee, look at me, I promise I'm innocent, okay? It's why I tried to speak after I had been defamed, and I believe that that was the first time you slammed the table at me and did not want me to speak. This is a matter of clarification, my friend and fellow board member. If you spend 2 years after being elected and putting your name on the ballot and being elected and spending 2 years plus the extra time for UNCOCAC, and someone robs you of something that is actually a real source of pride, I think that's why you're here now, and they rob you of that pride, that one thing you get, that intangible benefit of having performed, and say to the community, gee, I got a letter and we had to replace you, okay? That's a problem, and it's not something for me to come around, and it could be that we all let it go, and next week would be my one opportunity to address it. I tried to address it in the board meeting, but yourself and the chair spoke over me, and I didn't get a chance to defend what I think is a big deal. And I think it's totally irrelevant here, and I'm totally uncomfortable talking about it here, except that I think that I move that we report as a committee that we think UNCOCAC should be voted on, and all committee seats should be voted on. If there's actually more than 2 people. We've never even had the position of having 2 people. In the past,
Anybody compete?
It was just G.
Berg, you're legislative chair because no one else wants to be it, or
You were at the
education.
Capitol.
Yeah, it's always been, you know, we've had even positions where there's been no meetings. Have we had an education committee meeting? I can't recall.
But there's nothing else proactive to take away except that, at least my opinion, my last vote would be, I really think these things should be discussed so that we all have a chance to know why we would or wouldn't, and it should never be behind the scenes. So I think, I would move that we consider that. If we make motions, or we just...
Should be.
I would move that we at least ask the board in the final and future meetings to please discuss board or committee chair committee chair designations.
Okay, so assignments of the committee for July's meeting, because in July we elect a new chair.
Right.
And at the July's meeting, we place all of the committees and make assignments.
So it's pretty good.
Okay. Anyone have a problem with that? Is that okay? We can advance this as a report at the June 18th meeting, that at our legislative combination transportation committee meeting, is that item number 5 is to be expanded to not just say UNCOCAC being voted on by the board with community discussion and input, but the entire slate.
The entire slate of committee chairs?
Yeah, someone else may want to be legislative. So let someone else take it. And so it should all be up. All the stuff should come up with the new board. There should be new assignments. In fact, all agendas by the Neighborhood Commission office, when they do that in July, they do that anyhow. They put it on there as, you know, it's up to the chair. But usually that new season of a new term of that biennium, those committees are on there. They're on the board itself.
Discussion?
Yeah, let's discuss.
Okay. Again, I think it's, you know, we're a neighborhood board, we're not the legislature or anything. And I think, you know, I think it would be appropriate to suggest that the chair, if there are 2 people that want to be chair of a committee, that the board chair either have a runoff or a discussion or whatever. But in terms of, there are so few volunteers for stuff anyway. It's like, I could care less whether I'm chair of the marine environment thing if somebody else wanted to do it, because I'm sure they would have more time or whatever, more, you know, people to talk to, etc. So I don't really care. I've never been one to want to be the person in whatever situation. I'm okay with being 2nd banana, 3rd banana, 8th banana, 27th banana, doesn't matter to me. So that's number 1. But the second thing is, I don't want this kind of like taking a lot of time from our board meetings, because we're so jam-packed now, and we get so off the track that adding new stuff to talk about, new stuff to vote on, new stuff just is a problem for me. So I would vote against it for that. The place where I think, and this is just me, this is my opinion, the place where to take a complaint against the chair is with the commission. You fill out a complaint, the commission hears the complaint, you go down, you go talk to the commission, tell them what happened. You know, if you're complaining against the chair, then the chair has a chance to respond. I don't know what the new rules are, but I know that you used to be able to respond in written form, and then they take the complaint, and that's kind of like their job. There's, you know, they have many jobs, but this is one of their subheading jobs. Because, again, explaining what happened in this situation, and it would be probably between Kurt and Scott, I can't see that, you know, being of benefit to the community. I see it benefiting Scott or benefiting Kurt, and getting this stuff cleared up. But when you have such a specific and narrow problem between two members of the board, it's to handle it in a complaint form with the commission.
I disagree. I think that it's a fundamental issue when you have an elected official, in this case a neighborhood board chair, who willingly speaks on behalf of another government entity. If that is in fact okay, and that's where you two work it out, I think that epitomizes everything that's wrong with the indifference with democracy. And by that same standard, you can next week say, I got a letter here from the mayor. He says that he is canceling rail. You're going to need to write him otherwise. And you're okay to say that because there's no, or you might say, I've got a letter here and it's from, or Kona might say, I have a letter here and it's from the Land Use Commission. And apparently this person, Steve, on the board has a criminal record and we're going to have to remove him from his committee assignment that I'll be taking over. Now he could say it, and who's to keep him from saying it? Because after all, it might have upset or offend you personally. You might have something to lose personally when he states this in front of a camera and it's in government record in any minutes here on 2-4. And Kona might have something to gain because now he could be the chair. Okay, this is true, and on the one hand, if this is in fact okay, and we decide that a chair or vice chair can officially represent another government entity and misrepresent them without anyone else either calling them out or there being some ramification. I personally think that then makes the entire process a charade. And anyone can officially speak on behalf of any government entity. And if all the rest of the board says, well, gee, that's just you guys misbehaving, then I think that's a real travesty. I don't think it has anything to do with personal. I could not care less that I am not on OCAC chair. My term is over. What I care about is that a community is told, and apparently individuals, because you seem to be aware of this prior to the meeting, you jumped to the chair's defense and stated, Steve, that you had quote unquote heard. You had been in audience in the public defamation of my character. If it was written through libel, if it was spoken through slander, these things matter. It's one thing to say, you're bad or you harass. It's another to say, I have a letter from an official government entity, and I, as your official government spokesperson, have to represent this entity and take action. Because that is exactly what happened. And again, it's to be what it is, but I fundamentally would disagree with the idea that this is something personal or it's sides. Okay, it has, and I intend to test it. I intend to announce at the next board meeting that I've gotten word that Brian Mick, who's assistant to Joan Mank, has been removed from the Neighborhood Commission office for stealing. Because at this point, according to the Neighborhood Commission office, any elected official can state anything they want without ramification. There's really nothing to say. If the board says that's okay, then that's fine. It's just me reacting. But I'm not reacting over anything personal. I could not care less. I find it offensive, and I would find it offensive if in 2 years, either one of you have your 2 years of service summarized as, I've had to remove Steve for not performing, or Conan's been removed because he just hasn't done it. What does that say to the person watching, thinking they might want to run, they might want to be involved? Someone has to take a stand, or else it's just...
I don't see the item on putting it on the UNCLE-CAC on the agenda in July, number one. You're not on the board. I don't see this to be a discussion about what we just discussed tonight. What it is that I'm, as a community member, I've been attending what Hoppy the board meetings, why am I named the board meetings? I get Mililani, both of those boards. I've been advocating, because of my job, attending a lot of these meetings, certain issues with my employer as well. And at these meetings, all the agenda assigned are committees, out in Holton at a regular scheduled meeting. What Chair Hargrave did in the past was, or even Tesha Malam and others, they would have an executive meeting and say, who wants to be, let's divvy it up, let's talk, this is your interest, you want to do this, great, anyone else, okay, you're it. That takes place in a public forum of an agenda, whether it's a committee meeting assignment does it, or it's at a regularly scheduled meeting assignment. It doesn't happen between meetings. It doesn't happen between meetings. It happens out in the open, in the public. Every board I know of the 33 of them on Oahu, handle it that way. This is my first experience to have a board condone the actions of the chair to do what he did. I'm bewildered on how you want to excuse this. I'm bewildered.
Yeah, I don't want to step either way. I really don't think it's, okay, this is only my opinion. I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's very trivial. And I think, my own personal opinion, it should not take up the board's time. I think it's important not to take up the board's time. And I think if it is an issue with both you and Scott, you should file a complaint. That's what the complaint system is for, so that we don't take up board time. You know, we have elected officials coming to talk to us. We have developers coming to talk to us. We have, you know, public safety people coming to talk to us. We have community concerns. I don't see this rising to any of those levels in any shape or form because somebody's feelings are hurt.
It's not feelings.
Let me finish, please.
Don't speak on my behalf.
Let me finish. This is my opinion. I even stated in the very beginning, this is my opinion. Don't tell me about my opinion. This is a habit you seem to have and get into a lot. You tell people what they think or what their opinion is. Lay off that. What I would consider a neutral source. I also was there when at different times you've gotten upset and, you know, kind of like threatened to quit or whatever you've done. I really wasn't paying that much attention.
So then don't say that's what I did.
Wait.
Listen to yourself.
I'm entitled to my opinion. I thought you had quit. Whether I'm wrong or whether I'm right, that's what I thought.
Great.
And so I can express that opinion because I'm not saying you quit. I said I was told that you quit.
You weren't paying that much attention, but you heard it, so therefore.
Well, you're creating a disturbance. You're creating people are walking out because you're going ballistic, and so I'm saying, you know, why? You know, there is a system. If you have a problem, complain. You know, fill out a complaint and do that. And at the end, if you go back and you look at the video or whatever, I suggested that you both be, you know, chairs, co-chair. And let's get on with it.
But the decision to be the co-chair, though, needs to happen at a board meeting.
I'm not saying that this. I'm not saying how it should happen.
That's what this is.
But that's what I said. I'm very clear on it because that's the way I feel today. And what was the other thing you said?
On the board.
What was the other thing you said? I'm too old to remember. Two things.
Our alternate is also the chair who resigned a few months ago because he didn't have time.
Oh, yeah, I remember. So we have Rich, who's not delegating the responsibility of the key, and it's all screwed up. I don't know what's going on. I'm totally out of that thing too, but all I know is that we have 2 months, and I think they were August and September, or September and October. I can't remember where we had the elected officials come in and sit down. And it was from there on where kind of Rich just relinquished his responsibilities, at least from my point of view. And then, again, this is just my opinion. But, you know, it's like everything kind of went in the dumpster after that. So I didn't know what was going on. And Rich isn't there on a regular basis. He isn't a member of the board. If he was there, I would say something if it came up. I would say, you know, our past chair, unfortunately, kind of relinquished, from my perspective and my opinion, relinquished his responsibility. You know, in terms of getting the meeting and getting the key and having things, because I was there. So, no, I didn't jump on anybody's case then, even though I've been plenty upset about that. I didn't jump on anybody's case because he wasn't there. And because it wasn't of value to the community, you know, complaining about the past or whatever. And if he was on the board and he was running for, I would very seriously consider filing a complaint because of all the screw-ups that I attribute to him in the past. But it's over and done with. He's not on the board, he comes to the meetings and so on and so forth. So that answers that.
I just don't want July to come around and I'm on the board and next thing I know is committee reports and you're the legislative committee chair. Nobody told me, no one discussed this with me, I didn't know, the committee doesn't know, and all of a sudden Kurt Favela made a phone call to you and says, you're the legislative committee chair. That's the reason why this item is on the agenda, is because albeit whether you quit, whether you're being replaced, whether we don't look at the semantics of that, it was the fact that it's such a key position. It's the only position there's a voting power or privilege that, in my opinion, it should have been on the agenda. He's leaving, agenda, replacement for Scott. Let's make sure don't miss a step. Because it wasn't on the agenda and a decision made, the reason that item number 5 is here is that, first of all, in our experience, probably shared on this, the time allotted on an agenda item to just nominate the chair of each committee, again, can be done at an executive level, outside of the regular scheduled meeting, it's up to the chair. Or it can be done at a regularly scheduled meeting. And it doesn't historically take up really that much time. I haven't seen him go past 5 minutes. It's really a done deal, but it's just the formality of being transparent, offering everybody input, and not doing it in a closet, but doing it before the people. So my proposal of the motion you made was to put the whole slate on for July. The reason I wanted to advance this was because the chair in June, the outgoing chair, sets the July agenda. So whoever the board chooses in July to be the new chair lives with that agenda. So the setting of that agenda in July, of when we decide on who's the new chair, that'll be on the agenda. You can't elect a new chair without being on the agenda. I'm just saying, let's be of courtesy, at least offer discussion of the expertise. We have new board members, I don't know their names, I don't know what their expertise may bring. I think that it's of value to find out if someone has, we don't have a health committee, we have other issues going on. I'd like to see Campbell's issues addressed with their conditioning. I think we've dropped the ball. I think we've let them down. I have my own agenda, but where's the education committee? It's important to me. I just think we should discuss it at the board level so we know who these assignments are. Because if we don't put it on the agenda, then we're in the Wild West. We don't know what's being advanced.
I totally agree with you on that in terms of you know, and if you were like replaced, I would jump in and say, I think this sucks.
Thank you.
That's just my own personal opinion, again. But the situation is, you know, we should meet at like 6 o'clock and decide, and we should, you know, whoever wants to volunteer. And again, I say over and over again, nobody wants these positions, generally speaking, anyway.
I'm all for expediting the meetings.
It's fine and dandy, but yeah, I agree. It needs to be on the agenda. And I think, and again, Scott, so that you understand exactly where I stand. I think if everything is the way you have said it, then you should file a complaint. And I think the commission is in a position and has the facility in handling this kind of thing, that's what you should do. And I would you know, I would encourage you to do that, because it's like, if you don't, then you do have this situation. Now, if it didn't go down exactly as you said, you know, and it's more in the middle, you know, because there's one argument here, and there's one argument here. If it's kind of in the middle and a little hazy, then, you know, I don't know what the commission will do. But if you're right, and you know, he will be, I don't know, I don't know what they'll do. I don't know what they're doing now.
His resignation as the treasurer is what I heard, and I watched on TV, was he said, I don't, and he said it 2 months in a row. He was called upon in May to give the treasurer's report when he had said back in April, I'm not the treasurer, I don't like this new.
No, I heard from a different source. I heard from a neutral source, and so that's that. And all I'm saying is, like, I'm just being honest. I'm just saying, well, I heard you already quit. So, you know, I didn't even know. So if he's sitting there and he's at the board meeting, the people that told me that obviously were wrong. Because my interpretation of what they were saying was, he quit. Well, he's there, he's sitting there. I'm surprised because of what I was told, but they were wrong. So he's there, he hasn't quit. So, you know, I just go along with what's happening.
I actually talked to him at May's meeting, and I said, so you get an outboard report tonight? He said, yeah, I got a report. And when I watched the video, it was your turn to speak, and I took the microphone to Kobe, because Kobe wanted to speak. And when Kobe was recognized by the chair, he got trumped. Because he was on the agenda, we discussed it earlier, it says, you got a report, yeah, okay, this is what's going down. We got, the tip is very big, by the way, and it's revision number 13 to delay the leeward bikeway. If we're going to be on top of this, I wanted to hear it from my AMPO-CAC representative. When I found out that you were replaced, unbeknownst to me, the point of this meeting is the following, is that this is not, in my opinion, to bring up again at the July's meeting this issue. I don't want to advance it. If he does, he's got to, like I said, I'm not your attorney, he can advocate for himself. But I'm disturbed at the procedure of which I don't have to be Scott. I witnessed what happened to Scott and I don't like it. And that's what I wanted to do tonight, was that I want to protect the integrity of the board and the history of how we've operated in the past, that I've never yet seen a chair do what they did and replace and sign and do these things. I just want to be safe. I just wanted everybody to know up front, because if Tom Berg's going to be replaced on the legislative committee level, should I have the right to vie for that position? Should I be able to vocalize that, don't replace me, here's why? Can I defend myself? Or is it done in between meetings and I don't have a chance to speak? Because when he tried to speak at that meeting, they went into a sparrow and cut him off. We had a little dialogue, but here's my question. When I watched the video over and over and over, I says, Chair, at least clarify for me, who's my vote on May 20th meeting? And I didn't get an answer. That's what this is for. I think I'm voted against.
What I would suggest, I would suggest that you write up what you'd like it to be, whatever it is.
You see this?
Yeah. Request to place the consent on. In really clear, straightforward English for people like myself. You know, say that's what we decided to do. You should write something up, and then you should hand it out to the board members, and that we should vote on it. Rather than come to a conclusion now, because it's like, I'm not really sure still what you're saying, but if you write it, you know, in clear English and stuff, I would be more than happy to vote on it. And the other thing is, I never heard who was replacing Scott. I never heard, first of all, that he was not going, you know, that he was not going to be AMPO, because I think anybody from the community can be. Because we used to send people from the community that we didn't want to do it. We just sent it. So I never heard that part of anything. I just heard that he quit the board. So that's number one. And I never went into it. It was the kind of thing that came and went. But the reality of the situation is that, and I obviously, if I, you know, didn't, I mean, I heard at the meeting where everybody else heard. So I'm not saying that I'm innocent. I just wasn't around to hear anything.
Okay. Well, do we want to advance?
I think having transparency in the appointment of committee chairs would be a very important thing in the future, something, I mean, I'm not saying this, the words, but I believe personally that that should be done at the 6 o'clock meeting, and that we should meet at 6, you know, the hour before, whatever. And if we do that, you know, in July, I think in terms of, I've always remembered us voting in June and then starting up in July, but whatever. I'm not sure when it is. I would not bet anything on it because I'm wrong all the time. But I think it's a very important concept. I think it's a very important idea, and I think it's something that the board should vote on. I think it would be helpful. And then we, hopefully in the future, will alleviate some of the problems that we had with, you know, Scott's being taken off and somebody else being appointed. And
by the way, the board has the authority to override the chair on any committee assignment.
no, that's the way it should be.
But the chair has.
But at the same time, I believe that that's what we should do. You know, it should be very simple, very to the point, and it should be, you know, and if somebody else is like leaving, then it should be very clear when they're leaving. Because I obviously didn't know when Scott was leaving. I had no clue. All I heard was that he was leaving, and because we had so much turnover and so many people, you know, turning in their letters at one time, and you know, all that stuff, I have no idea what goes on there. You know, it's a situation where, you know, I don't pay much attention. If I'm on the board, great. If I'm not on the board, that's fine too. So
There are 2 openings.
Does the chair have the authority to just assign?
The chair has the authority to make those assignments for committee representation. However, the board has the ability to approve or disapprove and weigh in.
yeah, I think it should be done when the board's there.
Well, that's what
And if we have a 6 o'clock meeting, I know, I understand what you're saying. I would make it a little clearer and a little simpler for people like me and whoever's out there that needs it real simple and clear. The other thing that I would suggest that you know, if, just as a concept, if we have a 6 o'clock meeting to install new chairs, then anybody who wants to be a chair, be there at 6 o'clock. Otherwise, their chairship may go. But again, I've always been of the opinion we can have co-chairs. We can, as far as I'm concerned, if there's 3 chairs for a particular committee, if it's really, you know, a hot committee and everybody wants to be on it, that's fine too. I don't care. I don't think that means a whole lot.
we used to. We actually had at a period of time assignments where we had rules that says if there wasn't 2 board members at the committee level of the meeting, because there was a chair and a vice chair at the committee, this is when Special Malazzo was chair, the board could not advance any resolve at the committee level. So they couldn't even hold a meeting. There was, quote, no quorum. Then when Gary Bautista became chair, it was, you know, whoever's there is there. Anyone can vote. There is no quorum requisite anymore. So chair by chair was making up committee meetings. This is how it's going to be played out. So the prerogative is in that chair has that decision capability to make all these decisions for it. So I would, rather than do the following to make this simple, I think we could just dismiss the other motion and say it's recommended that at July's meeting that the committee assignments be placed on the agenda.
Great. The other thing I wanted to say real quick, because I just remembered it. Did you see Scott's thing of the committee meeting last night? I didn't. Okay, then great. Then you know. The only thing I want to say, I think the only negative thing that I walked away with is that there were several people there, mostly community members, but I think other people weighed in, where it was discussed that they thought, their opinion was, and this is my opinion of their opinion, which gets really hazy, but that you were having a hard time separating yourself from your employer at board meetings. And the thing went back when, I guess you worked for Will at one time, and then I know you worked for Rita at one time, and now you work for Kimberly. So that was the only other thing that was discussed. And my own personal opinion is, this is my own personal opinion, I think you do a damn good job separating yourself. Because seen you or heard you articulate things that were actually against the people in a way that you were working for and their positions. So I've seen you take stands up, so I have no problem with that. And the other thing that I think
I don't even give the reports anymore.
well, you hand them out and say that they stand on this report.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, so.
I used to stand up.
I know. So I wasn't of that opinion. And I also think in terms of legislature, we could do better than you if we lived 100 years. That's just my opinion. So it's like, and I have for years, the only time that, even when I was in the audience, I used to stand up and say, Scott has come up with this idea, or Tom's come up with this idea, Curtis come up with this idea, and I think it's a damn good idea. Why aren't people listening to it? Why aren't people doing it? Why aren't they implementing that? And that's kind of what I want to hear back, and that's why, I've taken this stand kind of against some of our elected officials, because they aren't doing anything. They're taking credit for stuff they haven't done or that was actually accomplished by other people. And, as a person in the community, it's always, in my opinion, you shouldn't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining now, because I'm not going to accept that. And sometimes I speak up and sometimes I don't. But the reality of the situation is, I was very happy with both of you. So, I never took a stand. I may take a stand on something that you were articulating, but it was the subject matter, not yourself as a person, not yourself as a board member. I think you're both better than me. And so the situation for me is like, you have to do a lot of wrong things for me to come down on you.
The position of transportation or any committee level chair is to advocate on behalf of the community. There's something coming up in your world of marine chair of that case. That needs to be on the agenda, in my opinion. So at the committee level, I'm all for 6 o'clock, going back to what we used to do, save paper, save postage, save money, and have these assignments. It's easier for the community, I think, in my opinion, that it's one shot in the arm, two birds, one stone type phrase. So that's what I'd like to do. So the suggestion would be, we've made the motion moot. You cool with that? We're going to start over with a new motion. And the new motion would be to request that at the July meeting, that the committee assignments be placed on the agenda for discussion, and to return to the 6 o'clock p.m. committee meeting schedule. Same place.
I just want to add one thing. This, or last night's meeting, or anything else anybody wants to do on different days at different places is totally okay with me.
That's right, you still
But it has to be collated in with the one mailing. In other words, it's going to take some planning on the committee member or chair's thing, and then the 6 o'clock meeting thing should contain maybe only 2 committee meetings. Because if we had 4 or 5, then they may not be able to sell out. If they're short, then it's fine, but they should check with the chair, tell them how much time they anticipate they'll need. So, and this has to be done in advance, so that it can be done. And then if we need to meet extra or long or whatever, these things can be collated in. And that was my big thing last night. I wanted to save money on putting these all in one mail out. What was the other thing I said? I can't remember now. Yesterday's a long way away.
So good with that? Everybody good with that? Can we just say aye, aye? 6 o'clock, suggestion, so that the setting agenda on June 18th, it will be conveyed. If we get to the agenda on a report, at legislative or transportation, either one can convey that we came to a discussion of an agreement that we would like to see the committee assignments posted at July's agenda, and the committees back at 6 p.m., the all committee meeting. So that's basically what I would say, those 2 sentences if I was given time. And then hopefully that would be accommodated. So we're good, guys? Good.
Fine, good to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry to yell at you.
It's the heat.
No, I hate being interrupted. If you interrupt me, I just hate shit. I just think people, you know, I didn't come from a background like that.
Thank you, Peter. Till next time.
You just.
So you were at last night's meeting too, huh?
I came late.